already well on their way to providing most of the educators in this district at least that first dose. Today marks more broadly a commitment for the state of California across the spectrum in all 58 counties to provide at least 10%, a minimum of 75,000 doses we are setting aside for our educators, for our school employees broadly, all up and down the state of California. On Thursday and Friday, we'll actually be utilizing the two large FEMA sites, Thursday and Friday in Southern California and in Northern California, as educator days exclusively to provide even additional vaccinations. Those don't come out of the 75,000 allocations. Those will be additive. It's just a commitment, our resolve to prioritize our educators as we're prioritizing our most vulnerable, our seniors and those in congregate care facilities, skilled nursing facilities, and the like. 9.1 million now vaccinations have been administered in the state of California. Positivity rate that should make everyone feel a little bit more positive about where we are and where we're going, down to 2.3% today. And that's based upon a pretty healthy 243,000 tests that were conducted as part of the reporting period. 3,500 cases. Just remember, 6 weeks ago, we were announcing over 50,000 cases of COVID, 3,500 cases just yesterday. Hospitalizations and ICUs coincidentally down both over a 14-day period, 42.1%. So things are moving in the right direction. Things seem to be stabilizing. We're seeing vaccinations increase. We're seeing the positivity and case rates decrease, though we are seeing a little bit of a plateau, and one needs to be mindful of that as we begin this transition to in-person instruction, as we begin the transition to safely reopening our economy with the appropriate modifications. But you can't reopen your economy unless you get your schools reopened for in-person instruction. You can't meet the cause that should unite every one of us, the issue of equity, and that's not just on the basis of race or ethnicity, it's also gender equity, unless you commit to getting our schools safely reopened in person. Single mothers in particular that are celebrating, I imagine, this day compared to many other previous days. So many of our kids and caregivers are celebrating this day because we all are united around coming back safely into the schools and helping with the social-emotional supports that our kids so desperately need. As the Pro Tem said, this is a $6.6 billion commitment. $2 billion specifically for grants to help with in-person instruction. Those are grants that can provide more PPE, though we have set aside 3 months of free PPE, for ventilation, for spacing, for issues related to health and safety. $4.6 billion of the $6.6 to deal with reimagining the school year, giving districts flexibility, looking at school days, looking at intervention, deeper intervention to address kids' wellness, to address their needs as it relates to community learning hubs, address learning loss as the districts see fit, including potentially extending the school year and moving the school year into the summer. 4.6 billion of that 6.6 provides for that flexibility. We incentivize opening up our schools by providing real resources to do it. We expect that all of our TK to 2 classrooms open within the next month. We want to see more happen beyond that for unified, going into red tiers. It's TK to 6, and it's a commitment to 1 grade in middle and high school. And our core belief is this: once you dip your toe in, once you build a cohort confidently, once you build trust, then we will start to see a cadence of reopening across the spectrum. But again, on the basis of building confidence and trust, not only for the caregivers, not only for our educators, but for parents as well that may be hesitant to bring their kids back in school as well. So we start with cohorts of those of greatest need, of greatest risk. And by the way, it's not just TK to 2, it includes our homeless, it includes our foster kids. It includes kids without devices, without the internet. It includes kids that are English as second language learners. It includes the needs, the most special needs, including IDD and physical disabilities. That's the commitment, that's our priority. We want to see this happen all across the state of California, and that's what this package provides. So I couldn't be more pleased and proud of the spirit that brings us here as well. Not only the spirit of the superintendent and this district, but also the spirit of leadership. You know, the pro tem made a comment that I smiled under my mask about the speaker, myself, pro tem, spending so much time together, though those two in particular, more than they have in some time. And it's right to just reflect in the last 5 weeks what they have accomplished as it relates to moratorium on rental evictions, as it relates to providing $2 billion of additional grants to our small businesses, to provide billions of dollars to 5.7 million Californians in direct relief checks, $600 checks to support childcare broadly, $400 million as part of that $7.6 billion deal to help support these efforts, including reopening schools. And of course, today, this framework on getting our schools safely reopened. So I'm proud of their leadership. I'm proud of their incredible collaborative spirit. The speaker and the pro tem and I have been spending a great deal of time together, not only on these 3 critical issues, but a series of other issues on sick leave and issues of conformity on PPP. If I haven't lost you, you're not paying attention, on many other issues. And we want to take that momentum, that spirit forward, working with the Assembly, working with the Senate, working with Senator Pan, who's been an incredible champion of all of these efforts, Assemblymember Cooper, who's been insistent that we move deliberatively but thoughtfully as well. And so I'm here in that light and in that spirit of gratitude and respect for their leadership and this moment where we can announce this agreement. And I look forward after that vote on Thursday to quickly signing this and moving forward to celebrating the reopening for in-person instruction of schools all up and down the state of California. And with that, we're here, all of us, to answer any questions.
Governor, I'm Adam Beam with the Associated Press. If things keep going the way they are in California, do you believe by the end of this month that most, if not all, of the counties will be in the red tier?
Well, I know this, that tomorrow we are likely, and we're getting the final information, to announce 7 additional counties moving into the red tier. This is on top of the 11 that are no longer in the purple tier. So it would represent roughly 17, 18 counties, plus or minus, we'll see what happens tomorrow, that will be out of the purple tier. We'll also preview tomorrow, as we do every Tuesday, the expectation of what will occur a week later, where we anticipate even more momentum still. So you're absolutely right to ask that question. But the good news as it relates to this school deal, we're not waiting to get out of this purple tier in order to get our kids safely back into in-person instruction. And that's what's so meaningful to me, that we're not slowing down, we're now accelerating the pace of reopening. But I'm very encouraged by the stabilization, the case rates, the positivity rate, and indeed, correctly, you're right, we do anticipate a majority of Californians in the next few weeks to be residing in counties that have moved out of the most restrictive purple tier.
And I understand the plan itself, while it does define what in-person instruction is, it doesn't set, a time limit that says you have to meet in person this many hours per day. Why was that not included? Are you concerned that districts might, just have students meet, just for an hour a day or so and count that? I'm not. I'm not, for one reason. Our teachers and our cafeteria workers, our food workers, our bus drivers, our custodians, they want the sights and sounds. They want kids back safely in school. I just think, once we break through, it's the old adage, once a mind is stretched, it never goes back to its original form. Once people feel confident we can safely do this, once we prove this out, TK to 2, these smaller cohorts, I have all the confidence that it's almost like a flywheel, that you're going to start seeing much more rapid pace of reopening. I don't think no one I talk to, at least, and I talk to plenty of people across the spectrum on this issue. People are supportive, people are cautious, people that are just uninterested.
in moving, they all share one thing in common, and that's a commitment to do the right thing, but their concern, their fear, their apprehension has gotten in that way, and that's what we hope we're clearing. And so I'm confident people won't be gaming the system like that.
Governor, Emily Maha with KCRA. We've been collecting some data from districts in our area, and we have found that some teachers are opting not to be vaccinated. Do you believe that educators should be having in-person interactions with students, especially in districts where social distancing may be a challenge? And if teachers opt not to be vaccinated, should parents have the right to know if their student's teacher is not vaccinated?
Yeah, I think everybody that wants to be vaccinated should be vaccinated. We do not think vaccinations are prerequisite to safely reopening our schools. That's not my opinion. That's the opinion of the CDC, Dr. Fauci, the opinion of educators and experts around the globe, including the opinion of President Joe Biden. And it is the opinion collectively of the legislature, at least on the basis of the agreement we're making today, that we can move forward safely in reopening before that 2-dose has been administered. That said, we're mindful of the imperative importance of building on the success of 35 counties that are already administering vaccinations. And today, again, I'll remind you, today, March 1st, starts the day we're setting aside a minimum of 75,000 doses to those teachers and educators. It's not just teachers, educators, school staff that choose to get the vaccination. We are hearing, in fact, we were just talking to the superintendent about some of the success he was having here, that the vast majority are very eager and supportive of receiving these vaccines. And now, as you know, this week, we'll have a third vaccine, and that's the single-dose J&J vaccine, which will provide yet another alternative, another option for people that choose simply a 1-dose regimen versus a 2-dose regimen.
Hi, Governor. Rachel Bluth from Kaiser Health News here. I have a question for you and for some of the legislative leaders here. This compromise is obviously a big compromise between your office and the legislature. A lot of members have been feeling a little sidelined this year about the legislature's role in dealing with this pandemic. To my knowledge, this is the first time that the Senate Assembly have had any input on vaccine distribution. Could this signal kind of a change going forward to have more input from the legislature, and what could that look like when it comes to vaccines?
I'm for more voices and more choice in terms of access and tiering as it relates to prioritization of vaccinations, and I'm very grateful that the two leaders are here and have been counseling us, advising us, and coordinating with us on many of those efforts, and certainly codifying some of the prioritizations for teachers in this legislation, which you're right is very significant.
Thank you for the question. I would just say, as someone who represents 40 senators or 39 others, and my partner here, 120 total, I can speak for him, but we've had many caucus meetings. We have had working groups who have worked in partnership with the governor's staff and office on all of these issues, on vaccines, on distribution. I mean, we've had more working groups coming out of the Senate specifically. We have a pandemic working group that was chaired by Lena Gonzalez from Long Beach, now by Josh Newman from Orange County. We've had more caucus meetings because I want my colleagues to be as informed as possible. Their communities are the ones with questions, and I will just see. So I believe we've had more conversations than I historically remember in the 10 plus years I've been in the legislature.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add other than to echo the pro tem's comments. Assemblymember Jack Irwin has led a legislative working group on vaccines and vaccine distribution. Our health chair, Jim Wood, has been incredibly involved in not only in oversight, but also in conversations in and around the issue of vaccines. Dr. Joaquin Arambula, who chairs our budget sub-1, has similarly been involved. Folks like Jim Cooper from the legislature, from the Assembly, have been involved as well. So we've been fully involved, and appreciate the governor and the Senate's cooperation on these matters.
Thank you. And just to sort of add on to our legislative leaders, I chaired the Senate Health Committee, and I know that I personally have been participating in practically weekly meetings with the governor's staff. I actually was able to join the governor in Cal Expo to talk about vaccines, and well, certainly, and away from the press event, we've had a chance to have those conversations as well. So I would actually say that the governor's office and Governor Newsom has actually worked closely with the legislature. Do we always agree? Not always, but certainly the door has always been open, and we've always proactively had many conversations about things like vaccine distribution and other types of issues as well. Certainly as chair of the Health Committee. Thank you.
Also, when you think of Dr. Pan, one of the first things you think about is vaccinations. So not just the chair, profoundly important voice on this subject. So thank you, Doctor, for all your work.
Governor, question, John Myers from the Los Angeles Times. One of the things that seems key to getting more kids on school and operating this from the state is understanding how many cases there have been at schools that are open. Your administration still has a document online from January 14th instructing for that data. We still don't see the data. So what can you tell us about it? What do you know? Because it seems that that's a big question that people want to know how safe these schools have been that are already open.
Yeah, so we have been providing that data on an updated basis, but we have now specifically set aside money in this agreement to hold us to account and to enforce the efforts with more transparency. We've incorporated a strike team with DPH that's working very collaboratively with districts currently. We've codified that in language, providing tens of millions of dollars for enforcement and oversight and data collection. We put a Safely Reopening Schools Hub website up as well a few weeks back as a preview of some of the more dynamic efforts that we'll be putting into place to have more timely reporting of information. There is specific language in this agreement as it relates to reporting, 24-hour reporting requirements for any cases. It has correction strategies as it relates to multiple outbreaks and what we can and cannot do. So we are laying that groundwork very, very prescriptively in this legislation.
Governor, just to follow up, Governor, I'm on the website right now under transparency, case reporting by schools. It's not there. So you said it's been released. Where is it?
Well, my point of the legislation is to provide much more detailed and timely information. As it relates to November, December, and January, those numbers are put up. We've been working with the legislature in the last 30 days to put together a completely different framework and strategy with different execution requirements, different criteria, and much more robust transparency, including resources to provide that information in a timely manner. So let me thank you for the follow-up so I can lay that distinction as it relates to what's in this legislation versus what we had in the past.
Governor Katie Orr with KQED News. I wonder, given that schools with this money will be able to extend their school year possibly, if you're expecting many districts to actually do that, because of course teachers have been teaching this whole time, just not in school, and if you're getting any pushback from unions who say, you know, our teachers need a break.
Well, the bottom line is we're providing flexibility. That $4.6 billion in learning loss flexibility provides for more peer-to-peer counseling, more investment in mental health, more counselors, provides more interventions across the spectrum that could extend the school day as well as opportunity to extend the school year. That's going to be determined. We also have provided not only that $4.6 billion in learning loss, but as you know, the federal government has provided us $8.5 billion in CARES Act 1 and CARES Act 2 dollars that also are supplementary and supportive in addition to the Prop 98 resources. And that, by the way, does not include the resources that we anticipate coming from what becomes of the $1.9 trillion new stimulus. So we have resources that will allow us more flexibility, more opportunity in the next weeks and months to answer that question in a much more robust way, depending on conditions. But I appreciate the point you made, and I'll just briefly comment on that our teachers have been teaching, that we have been committed to our kids, and I just want to recognize that. It's not just our teachers. We were just talking to a representative from AFSCME and all the classified employees they're here at the school site, have been. So our psychologists have been. Some even doing knocks on doors and meeting kids in their homes. So one does need to acknowledge the hard work that has been done under these very challenging circumstances with distance learning and some in-person learning that has been occurring across the state for many, many months. So the issue of exhaustion, obviously that issue, like so many issues, is a meet confer issue. It's an issue for the memorandums of understanding. It's an issue to work across the bargaining table to figure out, but we have now more resources to help figure that out than we've had in the past.
And one more quick question. If and when the vaccine is approved for children, do you anticipate it being added to the list of mandatory vaccine kids need to attend school in California?
Yeah, I'm going to wait. Look, on the J&J, we have a Western States Scientific Advisory Committee that's meeting today on the safety and efficacy of the J&J vaccine. We anticipate a little over 300,000 vaccines to arrive later this week at the FEMA sites. We had an ability to order 380,300. We're anticipating a little over 300,000 arrive at the rest of the week. The reason I mention that is to make this point. We need to look at the safety and efficacy of vaccines as more information is forthcoming from the FDA, guidelines come out from the CDC. Our Western States Advisory Group will take a look at the safety and efficacy for those younger cohorts. We'll be guided by their facts, their determinations, science, before we make any determinations of mandatory, voluntary, and when indeed those will be made available for people of younger age and younger cohorts.
Hi, Governor. Renee Santos with CBS 13. The question I have is, what conversations are happening right now when dealing with teachers, educators who refuse to go back to work simply because there are health risks that they're worried about, concerned about?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to be sensitive to that. And look, no one's compelling anybody. We're creating conditions where we expect in-person instruction. We're going to provide supports, supplementary supports, but people have compromised immune system, people that are not comfortable going back in, be it teachers, be it paraprofessionals, be it classified support staff, be it kids themselves. For whatever reason, conditions. Obviously, we're going to be sensitive to all of those issues, and that's why we're providing in-person grants, $2 billion to provide flexibility, and that flexibility is not just ventilation, it's not just PPE, it's not just sanitation, it's also personnel to help address those concerns as well.
Second part to that question, Governor, do you anticipate districts then having to look for substitute teachers to fill that void until, numbers progress and teachers start feeling more comfortable in classrooms?
Yeah, well, that's the whole purpose, again, of this agreement, to provide flexibility, provide resources that otherwise didn't exist, so those determinations can be made in 1,050 school districts up and down the state of California.
Hi, Governor. Alexi Casa from the San Francisco Chronicle. Two questions for you, if you don't mind. The first is, what role, if any, have district superintendents and teachers unions played in helping negotiate this deal? Because obviously it will be dependent on them reaching agreements to actually reopen under this framework that you've come up with, and the last couple of frameworks that were proposed by the legislature or your administration were pretty widely panned. And the second is, to your point about the plateauing of of coronavirus cases, the CDC expressed concern today about that as well. So are you looking at delaying any kinds of reopenings or anything like that, given that plateauing, in order not to put things like school reopenings at risk?
Well, on the second question, we'll be making more announcements on that in the coming days. As it relates to the first point, I'm very proud of the work we did together, and broadly, it's been embraced. The framework of this agreement has been embraced and has been within the architecture that was originally advanced. And so legislature, as well as what we put out. So as it relates to the details, we worked through those details and worked through them in the spirit of collaboration and cooperation with all of these groups, an alphabet soup of groups. Trust me, there are groups and there are groups. We had meeting, conferring back and forth, superintendent, county, local, principals, teachers, people represented, not represented, private, charter, the whole spectrum was part of the agreement, and that's just on our side. I can't imagine what the legislature also incorporated in terms of their own, and then each member had their own districts with their own district issues that I'm sure came directly to their doorstep, trying to incorporate those issues. So we tried our best. Look, there's no other school system like this in the country. It's the largest school system in the United States. Second largest school district itself is just LA alone, which is larger than many states, just that district. So it's a challenging environment, and people navigated, I thought, quite well. And over the course of the last number of weeks, I think we saw the opportunity to be where we are today.
So you're saying that you do have that buy-in from those large districts and large teachers unions that
I'm
you
sure
expect they'll actually move forward?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll find some people that will have strong opinions. Look, the bottom line is we created a framework that we believe is consensus. That in consensus doesn't mean everybody is happy. That's part of the negotiations, part of the process. You can get consensus in days that are perfect with an abundance of everything and no concerns around health risks across any spectrum. So the bottom line is this was done with the spirit of collaboration, bottom up, not top down. And what we presented and what we worked on as legislature really was the collective wisdom of all of these superintendents, all these meetings and groups that helped inform our decision making. And frankly, that process began a year ago. It didn't just start a few months ago. We've all iterated throughout this process of understanding and growing in appreciation and empathy as it relates to the dynamics that are constantly unfolding.
Hi, Governor. Nicole Nixon with Cap Radio News. I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about how hybrid learning factors into this deal. Are you leaving that up for school districts to decide for themselves? Asking because surveys have shown that many parents of color are more wary of sending their kids back to school, want to see all teachers vaccinated before that happens.
Yeah, no, the answer is absolutely. I mean, the whole framework around learning loss, we're just the pro tem made the point. I mean, we can get in the deep dive in terms of the equity framework on LCFF, which by definition is an equity frame, the Title I equity frame, which is part of the first CARES and the second CARES Act, by definition an equity frame, the work we did last year on the $5.3 billion on learning loss, which 81% of that was around a deep dive in the equity frame to address the anxieties, particularly for some communities as it relates to going back in person, but also providing supports as it relates to the frame of your question on distance learning, hybrid learning, in different models of engagement. And so that's the whole idea here is flexibility, but baseline accountability, much more transparency, much more data collection, much more aggressive framework on enforcement, a new hub that will be provided as schools reopen with information that will be much more navigable, much more available, not just in the media with respect, but to parents, most importantly. And that's the commitment we made to each other and to the letter of the commitment that's represented in the legislation as well.
Hi, Governor. Mackenzie Mays with Politico. On the point of teacher union support, would you ever get to the point where you would mandate that schools reopen? Say we get to the next academic year. Is that something you would consider like states Florida and Texas have?
Yeah, we want schools to safely reopen, period, full stop. I've been saying this for months. Said this when we announced the original framework in December. I've been saying it even prior to that. So we want schools to safely reopen. We believe they can safely reopen. We believe the data and the science bear that out. We believe what the CDC has been saying. We believe what Dr. Fauci has been saying and President Biden has been saying. We believe that we can do this. And now with additional supports, we have more confidence that we can do it with more granularity, even more safety protocols than we otherwise could have afforded on the basis of not having these additional resources and flexibilities. So we have all the expectation that schools will be safely reopened across the spectrum come this fall, and we certainly look forward to tremendous momentum over the course, not just the next month or two, but notably in the next few weeks. This district's a perfect example of this. They're not waiting till the end of the month. They're starting to move forward much sooner than that.
Hi, Governor. Sophia Bolag with the Sacramento Bee. You alluded earlier to the PPP loan conformity that you and the legislature are working on.
Maybe I shouldn't have done that.
I'm wondering, in addition to that, are there other aspects of early action that you're planning? And also, I'm wondering if you can address why state worker cuts that were implemented last year have not been part of your early action plans with the budget?
We're working, and all I can say, and I can truly back off now and have the two leaders speak, but we're working on the PPP issues. We're working on sick leave. We're working on a number of other issues, and we're working through. That's part of our broader budget conversation, and I can assure you, working with our bargaining units, we're having those conversations very robustly.
And can you just address why, those state worker cuts, restoring those weren't part of your early action proposal?
A lot of complexities, and I don't want to socialize them right now, particularly because we're working with those bargaining units to address those issues.
Is there a possibility that those will be restored earlier than just the budget in June?
We continue to work with the bargaining units. We're going to work with them in a collaborative spirit, great respect and admiration for the bargaining units that really stepped up last year to address a $54.3 billion shortfall. It's not commonly known, and I love the third follow-up because it gives me an opportunity to say this. It's not commonly known that state employees took a 9+% wage cut last year to help support our most vulnerable Californians, to help us close that deficit. I don't know many states can lay claim to that across the spectrum, and that was very meaningful. My staff took those cuts as well, I did, and so we're very cognizant of our fiscal health changing radically as now we're enjoying record reserves, and we are enjoying a significant surplus, operating surplus this year, mostly one time, that we are certainly committed to working with those same bargaining units that stepped up for us last year to address their concerns moving into the future.
Hi, Governor. Ashley Zavala with Nexstar Media Group. I'm just following up on John's question about the outbreak data in schools that are currently open. The last time we did get an update from CDPH was for the month of January. I was wondering if you, off the top of your head, might have that number for February. And in that same vein, is there a mandate in this agreement between you and the legislature on, I know you see a bright light, but a contingency plan in the event that COVID-19 becomes widespread again in communities across the state?
Yeah, I mean, look, no one's ideological about any of this. We're open argument, interested in evidence. We want to see where the epidemiology goes. We want to see what happens with these multiple variants. We have 2 West Coast variants. We're concerned about the South African variant. We don't have a Brazilian variant yet. We'll see if that happens. Obviously, we're concerned about the UK variant, over 200 cases now reported. We're all mindful of that. And so that, the future will unfold, and we will be very responsive to those changing conditions and those concerns. Anytime you pass a program, we didn't solve a problem. I mean, program passing is not problem solving. You got to implement, you got to apply, and in that application, you got to deal with intended and unintended consequences. So by definition, we're going to be sensitive to the changing realities and these mutations. But at the same time, one needs to be just honest with people and level set that we're down to 2.3% positivity rate. I mean, there's only 8 states in the country that have lower positivity rate. That this state is in a very different place than it's been in a number of months, certainly where we were 6 weeks ago. And as a consequence, where you have over 9 million vaccinations now that have been administered, and the prospect, we're going to get 1.58 million this week. We'll get 1.64 next week. J&J now being authorized, more vaccines on the horizon, more capacity in our ICUs and hospitals with surge plans that are very, very well oiled in the context of what we just weathered in the last 8 weeks, that we are in that phase, that transition phase, where we want to lean in and we want to step up, get our kids back in school and get our businesses back open safely with modifications, still wear masks, still do all the non-pharmaceutical essentials to mitigate the spread, particularly with those variants out there. But obviously, we'll be mindful. Now, as it relates to the data, as I said, the data, January and November and December, is made public in the last month. We've been working with the details of updating this data and those criteria, and we'll make sure you see the language specifically as it relates to the expectations on data reporting, 24-hour periods, et cetera. We'll present that to you, and we'll see where we are. And I'm happy once I have those February numbers to provide those to you as well. But I can assure you, based on the January number, it was lower than the December number, which is interesting because January, we were dealing with the midst of a massive surge. Of course, there may have been underreporting. No one's naive about that. And obviously, that's foundational in this legislation. The Speaker and the Pro Tem demanded that we had higher accountability thresholds, higher reporting expectations, and they were right to demand that. With that, thank you all very much. Wonderful to spend time, and I'm looking forward to a press conference when everybody else gets all the questions. Take care, everybody.
There, now I'm on. There you go. There was GovGav on the update on his non-reopening opening of schools. March 1st, 3 minus 1 equals 21. I put up on the title. It's about as confusing as all this stuff is going on anyway that we do each and every day. With all this stuff. And I mean, how do you get to such a lying sack of bleep? Practically every question that was asked was not answered. Where's the data on the schools that have opened? He was asked it twice. You have not updated it since January. You're talking about this transparency. You release all the information. He even said he released the information. You got a follow-up question asking him the same thing, and he double talks around it. I have no idea how anyone could support that. I mean, they ask him point blank, are you going to make it mandatory that kids have a vaccine for COVID-19 before they get into school? No answer. If the teachers do not show up for work, are you prepared to put substitute teachers in? No answer. He does no answer to the question. He talks about, there's pretty little birds flying in the nice blue sky, and it's 80 degrees outside, and isn't California wonderful? That's basically his collaboration and cooperation. If I hear those words again, I think my head's going to explode. They ask him about the PPE scandal. Well, I don't know much about that. We're going to be talking about that. No, you were the one that signed it. You were the one that advocated it. You were the one taking credit for it. Now today, when you're asked point blank, what's going on? I mean, you tried to do the Ollie shuffle away from it faster than lightning. The whole, and the question was asked, people of color, whatever that's supposed to mean, are not wanting to go back to schools. Will we have hybrids, or they're more or less inclined to do that without teachers or schools or being vaccinated or da-da-da-da. Well, do you have a plan for all this? Or who's the one that's scaring them half to death, making them think that the world's coming into the end over this whole enchilada? The one reporter that was key, and I got that, he said, you're basically paraphrasing, your previous reopening school plans have been a total disaster and went nowhere. Why do you think this one is going to work? And he says, well, we have the cooperation between the unions and the heads and da-da-da-da-da. This is Cicely Myert Cruz. president of United Teachers of Los Angeles. It isn't the biggest school district, school union, teachers union locally. It's got to be the second. This is Cicely Meyer Cruz on what she thinks how quickly schools are going to open in her latest update to her union members, which comprise most of the Los Angeles teachers.
That schools might be able to reopen on April 9th if safety conditions are met, including vaccines for staff. This announcement has created some confusion and has been misinterpreted by some in the media. There are no current plans to arbitrarily reopen schools on April 9th. The April 9th date has not been presented in bargaining between UTLA and LAUSD, and we will reject any fixed date that ignores the elements of a safe return.
So there you go. I want to circle back to what Newsom said when he was asked, are your plans subject to failure? Your previous plans of reopening schools are subject to failure. Mind you, this plan, as the speaker, as the Senate Speaker and the Assembly Speaker wrote down, Atkins, I think is her name, the Senate, and Anthony Redon, who's Speaker of the Assembly, and Newsom was there, and they all said, oh, we got this plan worked out. We passed a bill. We're going to do it by the end of March 31st. Subject, we're going to make this available to them. They're not saying this is a plan to reopen schools if you really read it. That's why it's the non. I put in the title, the non reopening of schools. So it's not mandating schools are open. But you just heard Cicely Meyer Cruz, head of United Teachers of Los Angeles, say, we're not going to go back to schools, send our teachers in. We're not voting for it until they are all teachers and staff are vaccinated. Now, in this plan or bill that has been negotiated between Gavin Newsom, Senate Leader Atkins, and Assembly Speaker Redon, there's no mandatory vaccinations in it for kids, school teachers, staffs, or anything else. So how in the hell is this supposed to work when you just heard Meyer Cruz, head of the UTL, say ain't happening, not even to April 9th, if all teachers and staff are not vaccinated? And that's probably 25% of your students in all of California are probably in the LA Unified School District. I know it's quite large. Maybe not as much, but I mean, LA County is about 25% of the population, and I don't think the deal is quite as big. There's some other small school districts in there, but it's quite a percent. It's a darn, like you say, if it's not the first, it's the second biggest school district in the United States. So again, with the double talk, the no plan, I'm scared to death I'm going to get recalled and lose my job. Gavin Newsom, steps up there and cannot answer questions from a mostly, in most cases, very friendly press corps up to the last week or so has been basically carrying his water except for a couple. But now they all seem to be asking the tough questions, which is great and which they should be doing. And Newsom is driving all over except the freeway ramp of the question that was asked. Cicely Myert Thompson, head of the United Teachers of LA Teachers Union and represents the teachers of that, said basically that anything that includes the proposals of no vaccination mandates and anything else is a non-starter with her membership, which is the biggest membership in biggest teachers representation in the state of California. There was ever a reason, if you haven't signed that petition, or you know somebody that hasn't, www.recallgavin2020.com, download the petition, sign it, get it in. We've got about 2 more weeks to get them all in. We're close by 1.9 million. We need 2 million plus just to be sure. And there's always a rejection rate to that. So sign that petition. Get anybody else that hasn't, get those last few signatures in, and let's get this recall of Gavin Newsom started and get him out of office as soon as possible, so he does the least amount of damage to the 40 million people of California. We'll be back on, if no other breaking news comes today, we'll be back on Live at 5 like we usually do on IE Newswire and Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, which is back up. And 5:30, we join the Mighty Met, 1490 AM, broadcasting all over the Inland Empire. So, until our next broadcast, see ya!